Shin was a directionless young man who reincarnated in another world and was trained by a sage as an SS rank magician. However, he did so with the hope of living a normal life. He enrolled in a magic academy but simply ended up defeating everyone instead. Everything began when he reincarnated as a child in the family of Merlin and Melinda, who took him in as their grandson while Merlin taught him magic. Shin learned the lessons very quickly and began conducting dangerous hunts that made Melinda worry, thinking that he was still too young for such things. However, Shin reminded her that he was the main character of this story. One day, Merlin took him for his first demon hunt. After giving a preparatory talk, Merlin said they now had to find their first demon, which surprised Shin, who inquired about the method they would use to accomplish that. Merlin immediately performed a demonstration and, after showing him, said that this required a certain level of mastery to achieve. But the little boy immediately activated his power and extended his magical energy throughout the region, surpassing Merlin. The sage remained surprised because he never expected the boy would achieve it on his first attempt. Shin felt an ominous energy deep in the forest and notified his grandfather about it, so they ran to the place immediately. Upon seeing the red monster, Shin went into action immediately before his grandfather could stop him. He killed the demon in a few blows, surprising the elderly man, who only stood there watching. Merlin reported the event to the others at home later that night, which left them equally surprised. This made Melinda wonder who he really was to learn magic so fast and even keep up with the combat skills of Michael. She concluded that he must be from another world, but Merlin replied that it did not matter where he came from. He saw the child as his grandson. The next day, Merlin called Shin to a separate place and told him he was not his real grandfather, but that he found him as a baby in the forest after his parents were attacked. They could not even identify his parents because they were torn apart beyond recognition. However, Shin was not too worried about this and told Merlin he was satisfied to have him and Melinda as well, leaving the old man moved. A few years later, they held a banquet to celebrate Shin reaching the age where he could legally engage in combat. His supposed uncle, Deepening, asked what he planned to do now that he was a man, but the young man was simply clueless. They suggested some job roles he could take, and he realized this would be the first time he would earn money for himself and spend it. The robust man was surprised that he had never even gone shopping before, and Melinda blamed Merlin for only teaching the boy magic and not lessons of daily life. Following this, Shin took them to a magic training field far from the city using his teleportation, and Deepening asked him to show the group what he had. Shin got into serious mode and unleashed a powerful spell that caused a massive explosion, creating a large hole in the ground and surprising everyone. Melinda got angry like an authoritative woman, blaming Merlin for not teaching Shin how to be polite, but the old man said he only wanted to know how far his powers went. Upon returning home, they thought it was still not safe to send Shin to the city due to his extraordinary powers and fighting skills, or he would become everyone's target. However, Deepening suggested that they enroll him in the Magic Academy since the Empire sought to expand its army. He assured Merlin that he would not exploit the boy for military use, but the clueless youth innocently asked what a magic academy was, and the king told him it was a facility to train magicians. The king then revealed that he was actually the ruler of the Earlshide Kingdom, surprising Shin because he had always seen him as his uncle since he visited his grandparents often. He also realized the other two were royal guards, and Michelle, his combat trainer, was a retired knight commander. Deepening explained that his grandfather and grandmother once saved him when he was almost eliminated as a crown prince during a demon attack. The next day, Shin and his grandparents set off for the capital, and after meeting the butler and the maids in what would be his new house, he went out for a tour of the city. However, he soon encountered some thugs who were trying to harass a girl, so he intervened and taught them a lesson. Afterward, the girl thanked him and asked if he was okay, but then he suddenly saw the attractive features before him, immediately short-circuiting his brain. Following that, the girls introduced themselves as Maria and Cicely, telling him they would be taking the entrance exams for the Magic Academy the following month. They were surprised as Shin also revealed he would take the exams. After Shin left them, Maria teased Cicely about the boy since she observed that the girl was already enamored with him. On the day of the entrance exam, Shin was surprised to see the crowd of students also taking the test, but he was more excited about seeing Cicely again if he passed. While checking the bulletin board for his exam information, a fool named Kurt got angry for no reason and tried to harass him, but the protagonist outsmarted him, making the guy even angrier. He mentioned his biography as the son of a high royal official, but Shin did not care about any of that. Prince August appeared at that moment and warned Kurt that attempting to use authority over another student was against the royal decree. Kurt left in shame, and Prince August praised Shin for how he resolved that quickly before, but Shin did not know who he was. He then introduced himself as August, the son of the king, surprising the youth as he realized he was Deepening's son. He responded that they might as well call each other cousins then, and August laughed in agreement. But Maria and Cicely, watching from afar, wondered why he spoke to the prince so casually in that manner. They went to the exam after this, and during the practical session, Shin was paired with some students, and they were asked to demonstrate their magic skills. The students were proud of the nonsense they were showing, but Shin almost felt nauseous because of how weak yet confident they were. When it was his turn, the examiner asked him to keep his power under control. Having heard about him from the king, however, the young man unleashed a terrible attack that almost destroyed the entire building. It surprised the examiner and the students, but he said he was still keeping his power under control even though he had an attitude demonstrating great superiority. The results from the examiners were soon published, and Shin placed first, leaving him with the responsibility of giving a welcome speech at the opening ceremony. He immediately got nervous and tried to pass the task to August, but the prince told him it was the academy custom for the top scorer. Meanwhile, Kurt was elsewhere frustrated because his scores were average compared to Shin's, which made him feel humiliated since this was the same guy who damaged his ego previously. Upon returning home, Shin decided to clear the default enchantment from his uniform and overwrite it with superior magic. He was excited with the result and showed it to his grandmother, who was surprised that he could achieve that level of enchantment. The next day, while they dropped him off at school, she told him not to tell anyone about his uniform, but he was not sure why she said that. Later, at the entrance ceremony, Shin was introduced for his welcome speech, and it was then that Maria and Cicely realized he was the grandson of the hero. He proceeded to give his speech like an experienced speaker, but Kurt simply could not keep his stress levels under control. Later, after their first class, Maria took Cicely to Shin, and they told him there was a guy harassing her because of her family status. Just as they were telling him this, Kurt began coming over like a typical relative, demanding to know why Cicely was talking to another boy. He tried to grab her, but Shin slapped his nasty hand away, and Kurt declared that Cicely was his fiancée, so he should move away from her. Shin noticed the girl trembling and told her he would protect her no matter what happened, so she rejected the engagement proposal again, making him very furious to the point that he threatened to have his father fire her father from his office. August arrived just in time and told him to get lost with his ugly attitude. Following that, Shin introduced them and two other classmates to his grandparents, and everyone was shocked because they were in front of the famous hero and the master. Several minutes later, Shin told Merlin and Melinda his plan to overwrite the enchantment on Cicely's uniform, but upon hearing this, Melinda went into detective mode and began questioning the one she had found suspicious before. She asked if she was worthy of accepting the gift he wanted to give her, since her uniform, with his magic, would become national treasure grade protective gear. Hearing this, Cicely began to cry while saying she had taken advantage of his kindness, and for that reason, she was not worthy. She stood up while apologizing and immediately tried to leave, but Melinda stopped her, telling her she had passed her test. In her words, if she had accepted it without saying anything, she would have kicked her out, but since she told the truth, she would be allowed to have it. Melinda finally hugged her, and she cried. Afterward, everyone left except for Merlin and the boy. The elder wondered how slow they must be not to have noticed that Cicely was trying to be sincere with Shin. Later, the boy overwrote the enchantment on her uniform, but everyone was surprised at how this was possible for a classmate like themselves. The king, who had already arrived by this time, told Shin they needed to keep this a secret, or it could cause chaos in the empire, as everyone might want to have it for themselves. Later, he also overwrote the enchantments on the uniforms of the others, except only Maria, who said she would pass this time. Afterward, he took them to his true home deep in the forest using teleportation magic, and they realized he was just using them for practice while calling them weak in 1,000 different ways. The next day at school, the homeroom teacher took them on a school tour, and afterward, Alice suddenly asked Shin which study group he would join, and he replied he had not thought of one yet. August intervened at that moment and suggested that, since none of the study groups would be a challenge, he should create his own, surprising him. However, the teacher loved this idea and even offered to be their advisor, which everyone liked, not giving the protagonist a chance to even say if he wanted to or not. They suggested even more ideas about what the study group would be about, which was already frustrating the youth because he had no voice in the matter. One of them finally proposed the name, the Ultimate Magic Study Group, and everyone accepted it immediately. Meanwhile, that night at the palace, the king was surprised by the increase in demon appearances around the kingdom. His subordinate, Gaster, speculated that based on the occurrences, it must be that the demons were artificially induced, but the king thought this was ridiculous, as there was no possible way the increase in demons could be caused by man. The robust man said these were unusual circumstances, and they needed to investigate it immediately. So the king gave the order to enlist the Demon Hunter Society and thoroughly discover what was happening. At the same time, Kurt's father had just been summoned by the king based on his son's failure, and he was very angry, so he went to look for him. Immediately, Kurt was still demonstrating that he deserved to be important, saying he was a chosen person, and how all this humiliation started when Shin appeared. He was about to speak trash about the king when his father shouted and slammed his stupid face into the ground. He then ordered him to be locked inside his room until he knew how to best punish him. The report reached the ears of the team the next day, and they wondered what had happened to him since he was never like that when they were at their old school. According to Thor, all this started when Kurt began visiting the laboratory of Professor Strum. He was a creepy professor who was transferred to their school in their third year. He added that the teacher claimed he was exiled from the kingdom to the school, and he always wore a patch covering both eyes since he was blind. However, he became interested in students with decent magic and invited them to his laboratory, but they rejected his invitations when they noticed something was fishy about him, except for Kurt, of course. Meanwhile, the boy's mother visited Oliver Strum, distressed about her son, and begged him to come help make him listen to reason. But when the subject visited Kurt, he went to take away his remaining sense by casting a demon spell on him that instantly turned him into a demonoid human. At the academy, Shin spoke with August, who told him he no longer necessarily needed to accompany the girls to school since the threat had been removed. Cicely got sad hearing this, but Shin said there was no problem in accompanying them to school as they lived in the same direction anyway. She jumped for joy hearing this, and everyone teased her for wanting to be close to him so intensely. August stated that Shin could just keep accompanying them since those girls were attractive and were bound to attract interested guys. However, the boy replied that his magic search would detect them if they were ever in danger. The group was surprised to hear that because it sounded like advanced level magic, but he explained that demons had a different aura than usual, and he could feel it if they directed their malice at something. These guys still did not understand anything he was talking about, so he asked if they had hunted demons before, to which they said no. He took the opportunity to surpass them as usual, revealing that he had started hunting demons since he was little, and even defeated a demon bear at one point, surprising them. Later that afternoon, on their way to their next class, Shin suddenly felt an evil intent directed toward them and wondered where it came from. He suddenly saw Kurt, who immediately unleashed a massive fire toward them, but the boy quickly intervened with a magic barrier, suffering some burns while doing so, but his body healed instantly. Kurt began to fail as he became more ferocious, making them realize he was already demonized. Shin told August to take the others and get out of there immediately while he faced the demonoid human. He lunged at him immediately while the others ran to hide, and after a series of exchanges, the protagonist managed to land an attack that caused minimal damage, but he was surprised because demons were not supposed to feel pain. Kurt stood up and began to curse him, which made him realize that he had not fully transformed into a demon. Because demons had no sense of reasoning to speak, he soon unleashed a powerful lightning bolt on him and thought there might still be a way to save him from fully transforming. However, while he was thinking of a way to save him, the enemy suddenly began to gather magic power in himself to create an explosion that could blow up the entire academy. So Shin quickly went into action. He summoned a magic sword and lunged at him, finishing him with a single blow before he could cause an explosion. He felt sad afterward because this was his first time eliminating a human and wondered what was happening. His friends joined him, surprised that he defeated a demonoid human. Meanwhile, Oliver Strum was watching from a rooftop and considered his experiment successful, but he became interested in who Shin really was at the same time. While thinking about what had just happened, August approached him to ask what was bothering him, and he suddenly asked if it was that easy to become a demonoid human. The prince immediately realized something was wrong because, according to history, only top-tier magicians could get so caught up in their magic and turn into demons. Meanwhile, Kurt had just been accepted into the academy, and there was no way he was capable of that. This made the protagonist speculate that it must have been artificially induced, surprising them. He added that his grandfather once told him that demons lacked their sense of reasoning, but for the student, it was quite different because he could still speak, and he was also quite weak, surprising them. He then concluded that the boy might have been used in some kind of human experimentation. Afterward, they were called to the palace, and upon arriving there, the king thanked him for eliminating the threat, and for this, he said the boy would receive the First Order Merit Award, surprising him. However, Merlin was not happy with this and asked what the award was for, reminding the king that he had promised not to use the boy for political purposes. Dicey responded that the kingdom once faced a high-level threat when a demonoid human appeared, which put the entire nation in a state of panic and chaos until he and Melinda saved the day. However, another one appearing at this time could have sent the nation into another frenzy, but thanks to Shin, who immediately handled the situation, he brought calm to the people. Merlin, even with this, was not convinced that the boy should receive an award so that he would not be a public target, but the king told him he had to receive the prize since he could achieve the same as the hero and the master did. The sage finally accepted but warned that they would leave the kingdom if the boy's safety was ever threatened, to which the ruler promised to protect him at all costs. Everyone began to admire the youth after this incident, with some girls wondering who his partner was because they would want to be with him for themselves. Some other students began pushing for a place in the Ultimate Magic Study Group, and two new students were selected. The first was Mark, who was from a family of blacksmiths, and the other was Olivia, who belonged to the same lineage of famous cooks. Shin asked Mark if he could manufacture weapons, but the guy responded that he was still an apprentice in the craft and could barely forge knives. The boy told him he would have loved to get a new weapon if he was good, and the apprentice responded there was no way he would match the weapon used when killing the demonoid. But Shin told him he only used an ordinary sword, although it was only reinforced with magic power, which made it possible to cut anything without force. Hearing this, Mark decided to forge something great then. Meanwhile, outside the city, some guys from the security office visited Strum after learning that he had visited Kurt the day he demonized. While asking him some questions about his relationship with his students, the professor managed to give clever answers which the investigators did not suspect. They even invited him to join the investigation to examine what really happened to the body. They took him to the capital city, and on their way down a hallway, the scholar asked asked why they were heading to the parade ground, but the investigator responded that they were only following protocol. However, upon arriving at the parade ground, the villain realized that he had been lured to this place to be captured as the army appeared around him. The investigator then explained that the student had made a mistake before, which gave away his secret. The king had in fact issued a gag order to prevent the nation from knowing the victim's name, just to protect his surname. But the suspect, in his conversation with them, had mentioned the name, which he should not have known. This only meant that he knew something about it. Realizing that he had been caught by the investigators, he laughed out loud and revealed that he had used the boy for an experiment while preparing to unleash his magic. Meanwhile, Shin and his friends were passing by right at that moment when they suddenly heard a bang through a nearby wall. They suddenly saw a guy with an eye patch, and August identified him as their former school professor. One of the guards immediately warned the prince to run because this guy was the one behind the demonization. Hearing this, the protagonist got angry and launched an attack immediately, but the enemy blocked it with a magic barrier. However, the boy pierced it with his sword, surprising the villain as he quickly dodged an incoming blow. He stepped back and immediately applied an earth technique, but the professor was suspended in the air, surprising him because that should not have been in the script. However, the youth lunged at him in the air anyway and unleashed a powerful magic attack, revealing the villain's red eyes. Shin was surprised to realize that Strom was a demonoid human with his sense of reason perfectly intact. The enemy became even more sinister and began to speak ill of humans and how he did not care about eliminating them like chickens. The hero got angry and sent an attack, but it missed, and while the villain thought he was the final boss of the story, he did not realize the youth was already preparing a massive attack to send him into the fire. A massive heat beam suddenly hit him, sending him to the underworld. The others were surprised that he was able to achieve this, and two palace officials, surprised to see that the reason they came had been handled. They asked him how he did that, and the young man simply explained something that sounded like quantum mechanics, but it seemed like they were not understanding it. He told them everything was thanks to luck. Meanwhile, outside the city, it was revealed that the professor somehow managed to escape before the punishment hit him, but he left an explosive as a distraction. Now, he reasoned that he needed to take all necessary measures to ensure the protagonist did not interfere with his plans. Some days later, Melinda called Maria aside secretly and asked what was going on between her grandson and the blue-haired girl. Maria told her that something romantic was definitely brewing between them, although Cicely did not realize she already wanted to be with him, as this was the first time she had felt this way toward a boy. The next day, on their way to the business of the blacksmith shop, August noticed that Shin was frowning and asked him about it. The youth suddenly declared that the villain might still be alive, surprising the prince, who then asked how that was possible. He explained that he tried the same heat beam in the forest and discovered that it did not leave a trace of an explosion as it did with the enemy, which must have meant that he deliberately caused an explosion while escaping to trick them. Hearing this, the prince told him to ask for any weapon he needed at the workshop charged to the palace, since he was the only one who could defeat the threat, and he needed to be properly equipped for it. Upon arriving at the smithy, they met an average-looking man who happened to be Mark's father, and August told him to do as ordered. Meanwhile, at the royal castle of the Blue Sphere Empire, a guy named Zest reported to the king about his findings in the Earlshide Kingdom, saying that the empire was currently in commotion due to the infiltration of demons. This amused the ruler of Blue Sphere, as he thought this was a perfect opportunity to take over the neighboring land. Later that day, after the youth described what he needed to the blacksmith, he noticed that the shop had other floors and asked about it. His friend told him they sold other materials and accessories there. The boy immediately asked Cicely what kind of accessories she wanted, and thinking that he was trying to woo her in broad daylight, she got embarrassed only for the clueless youth to say he was thinking that enchanting accessories with defensive magic would prove highly effective. The others asked how he could have ruined that moment, but he still did not realize what they were talking about. He took the girl to the accessory floor anyway, and he asked her to select whatever she wanted, but she asked him to choose for her because she did not know which one to select. So he chose a ring for her, and after enchanting it, he told her this would keep her safe, but she had taken it further than he imagined, for she thought this was a proposal. A few days later, it was the day of the award ceremony, and the hero was called to the palace hall to receive his prize. He walked onto the stage looking very good while everyone cheered for him. After presenting the first order merit to him, the king announced his promise to his guardians before everyone, and he said the day this was breached would be the day the sage and the master would take him and depart from the kingdom never to return. Meanwhile, the boy was surprised that he actually told everyone about that. On his way back to the academy, he discovered that he had now become a celebrity overnight, with everyone trying to get his attention. So he immediately created a portal and arrived at the academy with that instead. But he stepped out in front of some attractive features before him and almost lost control of his magic. Meanwhile, those who had not seen him use this before were surprised, and the youth did not miss that opportunity to demonstrate his level. He then thought it might be time to level up the magic power of the team due to recent events. So he gathered them in a class and began giving them lessons on the use of magic barriers. He took the opportunity to show off again by showing how powerful his magic barrier was, unlike the weak one of Maria. Seeing this, the girls were impressed by his great ability. He then told them they would get nowhere if they could not control that amount of magic magic power. And because of this, they would start practicing magic control every day. At the same time, in the Blue Sphere Empire, a lady named Miria brought a new report to the villain about the Empire going to war, and he laughed hysterically as if everyone were dancing to his rhythm. Shin took his friends to meet his grandparents after their class, and they told Merlin that the boy had been tough on them in their training. The sage then revealed that what made the youth special was his ability to visualize the magic process and not just the result alone, surprising them because they were clueless about what that meant. The grandfather then spoke about some important technical information, and then he demonstrated that he had also learned to use relocation magic thanks to the instructions, surprising the boy. He finally told all of them that anyone could achieve those results with the right technique, visualization, and magic power. Afterward, Melinda praised the old man for his speech and how he had to learn to use relocation magic just because he wanted to prove that the boy was not abnormal as most people thought, and that anyone could be like him. After this, the protagonist went to pick up his weapon from the smithy, and he tested the new innovation of changing the blades without the handle, as one of them had suggested. Seeing this, the prince asked if they could also use this technology for the nation's army so that weapons could be mass-produced, reducing costs. August then revealed the unexpected truth that Earlshide could go to war with Blue Sphere, as the nation had been massively preparing for this. Even the academy students could be enlisted for the war, but the prince stated that he would not involve him in the nation's mess since he was busy handling the demonoid humans. However, the hero responded that he would not refrain from joining the war if they were ever in danger because they were his friends, and he could not be without them. Some days later, the king of Blue Sphere, Harold, received the report that the troops were already waiting for them at the border, surprising him because they were not supposed to know that the Empire planned a secret attack on their kingdom. He got very upset and asked the guards where the commander was, but he was told that he and his scouting party had been missing since the day before. Hearing this, Harold realized he had been tricked and swore revenge on the commander if he ever got his hands on him. Just then, another report arrived that the imperial capital was already under siege by demons, surprising him, and he ordered them to withdraw immediately to protect the capital from being taken over. Meanwhile, in the army camp, two commanders were planning how to pursue the retreating forces until eliminating them. However, a soldier suddenly entered with the report that the advanced guards were being attacked by demons. The commanders were surprised and wondered if the retreat of the army was being helped by demons. At the same time, there was a demon rampage inside the Empire with Strom and Miria at its core. She had now become a demonoid human with crimson eyes. As if he were out of his mind, the villain asked her how she felt being a demonoid, and she replied that she felt more powerful than ever. Several days later, the ruler returned to the imperial capital in a hurry, and just as he ordered his soldiers to ensure they handled the situation successfully, he entered his throne room only to find the villain sitting there. The enemy told him that he had come to personally do the honors of sending him to the hereafter. He immediately activated a magic circle under him and absorbed his essence with his evil spell. About 3 days later, the two commanders visited the imperial capital and were shocked by the sight of the destruction. Wondering what had happened just then, the antagonist suddenly appeared and told them he had been waiting for them. He thanked them for reducing the number of the imperial forces since it made it easy for him to eliminate them. They realized it was he who instigated the war, and as they prepared to go against him, they suddenly saw a large group of demonoid humans. They returned home 3 days later and reported this to the king, which left everyone wondering what to do next. The next day at school, the homeroom teacher stated that regarding the ongoing situation, the Magic Academy students also have to join the battle to protect the land. After class, Shin noticed his friends were not as pleased with the development and asked them about it. They told him about the long rivalry and competition between the two academies, as each thought they were better than the other. The protagonist tried to calm them by saying they should complement each other, but they responded that he could say that because he was good at both magic and swordsmanship. They then asked who taught him swordsmanship, and when he told them it was Michel, they almost fainted. The youth learned magic from the hero, item enchanting from the master, and swordsmanship from the sword saint. Everyone thought at this point that he was especially favored by luck, while they were just secondary. The next day, the magic students met the knight hopefuls, but the knights still thought they were better than the magic boys. On their way to the training ground, the protagonist tried to give his motivational speech again, saying the two teams needed each other, but the arrogant knights told him to stop talking nonsense. He asked if they had fought a demon before, but they got angry thinking he just wanted to brag because he had defeated a demonoid before. So, in order to teach their stubborn heads the point of training, he declared that when they encountered a demon, the knight training students would go first into combat to demonstrate what they had, and they accepted. Going deep into the forest, he suddenly felt a demon nearby and immediately alerted the knights. A demonized boar soon appeared, and the knights got into their fighting stance. The monster easily defeated them and almost sent two of them to the other world, when the hero quickly drew his sword and attacked the boar, cutting off its head in a single stroke. The knights were surprised and, learning their lessons, apologized for being rude the whole time. In the middle of the town, Cicely came to heal their wounds with her healing spell, and the guys immediately fell in love with her, seeing how attractive she was, making the protagonist jealous. After that, the guy started treating the boy like a princess, while the hero had almost gained 10 pounds of pure anger and jealousy. August told him to go and conquer his girl like a real man, but the young man was simply a coward in matters of women. Just then, the blue-haired girl told him to stop joking since new demons were heading toward them. He checked this and realized there were many. And before they could think about what to do, two of the knights ran toward them, warning them to run because there were close to 100 of them. Surprising them, the youth said they should leave it to him, and they immediately accepted since they were only going to slow him down after all. As the monsters approached, appearing to be rabid, he began to prepare a powerful attack and unleashed it, eliminating them all at once. The knights were surprised to see that and immediately regretted having spoken ill of him before. One of them, named Miranda, went to apologize for being disrespectful. She also apologized to the girl for speaking ill of her boyfriend, making them both embarrassed instantly. On their way back, a demon bear suddenly emerged from the forest, and the knights and magic students worked together to eliminate it. The two veterans, seeing this, were pleased that they were already learning how to combine magic and the sword. Then, Siege approached to ask the hero how the prince and his other friends had achieved so many improvements using magic. He responded that he formed a study group, and they are members of the group. The soldier realized that the youth was giving them special training, but he responded that he would not call it special, since he was only teaching them the same way his grandfather taught him. Hearing this, he asked to join the group too, so he could learn how the magic was done, but August intervened, saying that would not be possible because he was in the army, and that would mean militarizing the power, which could lead to some diplomatic problems. The prince further said they did not want everyone to have access to that level of magic, because if that happened, the world would not be destroyed by demons, but by humans themselves. He added that he had told the other group members to prevent this power from spreading through the world. The soldier, however, told the boy to simply explain how the sage taught him, and the prince told him it was simply learning to increase the amount of magic he could control. That is all. The man found this too basic, but August called the girls and told them to create magic barriers. They immediately activated magic barriers, which surprised the soldier when seeing how thick they were. However, the girls told him this was still thin compared to the protagonists, and that they still had a long way to go. He then said he would practice his magic control too. Just then, Miranda came to meet the hero again to thank him for handling the bear and the boar for them. He told her not to worry about it. Meanwhile, for the other two teams, the students in the first team managed to establish the fact that the confident knights needed the help of magic. However, those in the other group only managed to ruin everything since the magic students also only wanted to show off, but their magic blew up in their faces. After that, the youth felt discouraged, and noticing this, one of them asked what was wrong. August then dropped the news that for those who were in the Ultimate Magic Study Group would be placed under national supervision after graduation, and could be required to join a special unit directly under his command. This could make them a target for other lands. The hero felt sad for having changed the trajectory of their lives, but they told him not to worry about it, since they were more than happy to be part of this, surprising him for he did not expect them to be happy. The prince then told him that as long as they did not misuse their powers, they could become the first heroes in history. Hearing this, they suggested they needed more training to become stronger since they would join a special unit. They went to train after this, and during the training, August gathered them all, saying he had important information he had to tell them, which had not been revealed to the public yet. They were surprised that he wanted to reveal the state secret to them, but he told them they were no longer part of the general population, as they would become an important part of the forces once the war with the demonoids began. He then proceeded to reveal that the enemies had been causing a disaster, and at this point, nations must join forces or they will not be able to resist them. Then, August dropped the main news, saying the demonoids were increasing in number every time they attacked, which meant they must be turning their victims into demons like themselves. Surprising everyone, due to the development, Shin suggested they have a training camp so they could strengthen themselves preparing for the imminent battle. Back home, he told his grandparents about this, and his grandmother yelled at him for wanting to gather boys and girls of that age under the same roof. She then said she would go too to keep an eye on them, and hearing this, Merlin said he would go too if she went. The next day, they set off for the campsite, Sicily's hometown, and on their way, they felt some medium-sized demons and made it a sport to see who eliminated more demons. This amused the grandfather because everyone was becoming stronger, but Melinda thought they were doing something terrible to other people's young ones. They finally reached the hometown that night and were warmly received by her family. After that, the sage and the boys got into the hot springs, and while relaxing in the hot water, he began thanking them for being friends with Shin because that guy was a lonely fool without social skills. However, August, always the humble guy, said that meeting the hero made him feel comfortable because this was the first time he had a friend who treated him as an equal. The other boys also mentioned how cool he was for having befriended fools like themselves. Hearing this, the youth turned to his grandfather and thanked him for raising and training him, as he would not have become the man he was now if not for him. Merlin immediately became teary-eyed, but while the boys had a confession time, the ladies talked about their physical attributes and stuff like that. Things soon became very interesting as they had fun together. The training camp began fully the next day. Seeing their rapid improvements, the grandmother commented that they could put the Imperial Magic Division out of business, but the protagonist said there was still a long way to go, as fighting the demonoid humans would be a major fight, and even he had to level up his magic. Hearing this, everyone got scared and left. After that, he decided to surpass them with his magic power again. Seeing the massive destruction he caused, the grandmother came to give him a blow, asking why he used so much power. They soon called it a day for training, and as they were leaving, August told him to take him back to the palace because he needed to gather more information about the enemies. Upon arriving at the palace, they suddenly found a princess named Elizabeth waiting for the prince. She began complaining about him not returning early, which made the hero wonder who she was. August revealed that she was his fiancée, surprising the boy since he never mentioned he had a girl prepared for him already. The princess approached to greet him, but August asked what she wanted, and she accused him of leaving her and May alone while he went to camp. May, the prince's sister, appeared just then and said her brother was horrible for having let her miss the chance to see the master, whom she knew she had been longing to meet. He was surprised and tried to calm her by being the nicest guy. Then the brother asked the two what they were doing there, to which they responded they had decided to join them at the camp. He got angry and immediately clarified they were not there playing simple games. However, when they raised this before the king, he told his son to allow them to go with him, since the two heroes were there, and they would be traveling to the place with magic, so there would be no problem. They returned to the camp, and the girls were surprised that something like this was possible. Meanwhile, the prince informed his fiancée that he would not be available for a couple of moments, as this was a magic training camp, and she responded she would not stand in the way. She had only come to ensure there were no nuisances around him. The protagonist was amused by this and asked if she did not like seeing other women around him, but he was surprised when she revealed the nuisance she referred to was him. She stated that everything her partner talked about recently was about the hero, which made her jealous. He found it embarrassing that she thought they had some kind of strange relationship. The prince revealed that she still liked to joke, but he seemed to be at peace being with his new friend. However, she began throwing tantrums because all her ears heard was that she caused him trouble, so he had to find rest in someone else. He calmed her with some sweet words. Settling into a restaurant, August, still trying to reassure his fiancée, revealed that the boy had a great affection for someone. He had a girl, surprising the hero himself as he wondered who was dating him without his knowledge. The prince revealed he knew the tension between the two, which could not mean anything else but that they loved each other. Shin, the slow fool, asked how he was sure the blue-haired girl liked him, but his friend asked if he would keep being slow and not take action. After that, he felt very embarrassed when he saw her, which made the others realize this was the one he talked about, so they teased him about it, making him more embarrassed. Later that night, May finally met her idol, Melinda, and seeing her tender attitude, the grandmother said she was not like the protagonist, who was all over the place and she had to hold his hand all the time. The others added that it was definitely not easy to train someone like him. Everyone found a way to tease his upbringing, but reaching her turn, the girl told him not to worry. They would love their children well, surprising everyone. She soon realized what she had said and got embarrassed while running away. After that, the prince approached him and said he would have to be a fool not to catch that signal. Realizing she liked him, he met her later in a gazebo and had some tender moments before finally telling her he loved her. She said she loved him too, and then he asked her to be his girlfriend. Then came the part where they kissed, but before they could do so, they were interrupted by their friends who had been lurking in the bushes. Everyone teased them both, and the hero officially announced they were now a couple with future plans. However, August, after congratulating him on his new love affair, told him not to get carried away because there were still demons to face. The next day, they continued their training with intense games and almost got hurt, making the master scold them. However, the sage thought they were doing a good job and told them to continue. But the protagonist, who brought the idea in the first place, was already exhausted because he never expected them to take it that far. After the training that night, everyone spent time talking, but he suddenly noticed his grandmother coming and they quickly hid under their blankets, which surprised her to see them all asleep because she thought she had heard voices before. The two lovers were left under the same blanket and the girl was almost reaching her limit, surprising him. He soon realized that his hand was on her chest, causing him to scream instantly. The grandmother found them in this compromising position and yelled at him for thinking he could already have intimacy because he was in a relationship. One random morning, while he was out showing off his magic muscles, she cornered him with that look on her face and basically said they should get engaged, so he better go meet her father before he went to work. The hero, being the smitten and confident mage he was, nodded and took his clueless self to her house. Her parents were chill. They gave their blessing faster than a passing fad, and she turned bright red from embarrassment. They headed back to camp, where everyone was sweating buckets training, launching spells like they were trying to outdo an action movie. Elizabeth stood there with her jaw dropped, wondering how these maniacs had not blown up the whole planet yet. Just then, he said some nonsense about that being only the warm-up, and she almost fainted from the shock. The grandfather showed up to tease the two ladies about wanting to watch, and then told them to try doing magic themselves. The fiancé backed out faster than a bad date, but the sister got excited and actually pulled it off, making the old man nearly cry with pride. Meanwhile, in the capital, everything looked like a scene of desolation, buildings reduced to piles of rubble and despair floating in the air. The villain basically asked for the report on how ruined things were when he was told everyone was starving and miserable. He looked ready to celebrate celebrate, saying his evil plan was going just as planned. Back at camp, the protagonist decided to test out a new spell. The team held up their shields like he was about to eliminate them all, but he told them to calm down because it was not offensive magic this time. Then he made a rock float in the air, acting like it was a groundbreaking magic trick. The group still freaked out and called him amazing, even though their brains clearly glitched trying to understand any of what he explained. Then he showed off more, cast the spell on himself, and started flying like a supercharged wizard, leaving everyone speechless. The prince just shook his head and told him he would stop being surprised, while the girl admired him intensely, calling him incredible for the millionth time. Later that day, they did the engagement announcement round number 2 with the grandparents, and the elders decided to tell the story of the protagonist's origin. They told the family he was adopted, worried it might cause drama. Her father basically shut that down, saying they did not care where he came from. They liked him because he treated her well. Everyone cried with joy. He promised to protect her forever, and the whole thing felt like a sappy romance special. Fast forward to the next day, the team suited up in their new magic-enhanced uniforms, stronger than half the national treasures. He explained the enchantments like he was selling something valuable, promising they would boost their defense and power. The group was hyped but also scared when he told them they would be going head-to-head with top-tier demonoid humans. The girls complained about being left out, but the prince explained it was real combat training with big monsters and their fragile heads might get crushed. He gave her a magic phone so she would stop being annoying, but the grandmother found out about this new tech and scolded him for basically inventing magic smartphones without permission. Ignoring the scolding, he led the team outside, and she got instant chills sensing a huge cursed lion lurking nearby. He split the group and sent the first wave to eliminate the monster, which they did with an attack so strong the poor beast did not stand a chance. The team went into full action mode, taking down every cursed creature in sight like they were on a demon cleaning mission. August patted him on the back and joked about the engagement party, while the hero just grinned like a fool. Finally, the day arrived. He looked sharp in his suit, she wore her dress, and her mother escorted them to the ceremony while everyone cheered like they had received free gifts. Even the king showed up to clap and nod in approval. Later, the whole team finally figured out how to float like they were in a budget movie. They were having a blast pretending to be in the air when everyone found out he had been basically carrying them with levitation magic while they flapped around with wind spells. He was standing there feeling proud that these clowns had mastered flight when he was doing all the heavy lifting. May started complaining about wanting to fly through the sky too. Then he pulled out some communication device to call these flying disasters back to Earth. His friends admired this basic communication tool, claiming it would be perfect for the prince's coronation ceremony because they apparently had never heard of a microphone before. The scene shifted to the villain's haunted mansion where he was getting updates that made his day. His assistant gave him the news that the last city had officially fallen, and every town and village in the region was now a ghost place. He mentioned how the demon squad had been raiding the caravans, cutting off all food supplies like they were running some twisted catering service. This assistant was having some internal second thoughts about his boss's methods, wondering why he was acting like a total supervillain when all these innocent people were getting caught in the crossfire. They went to the throne room, where the enemy decided to give his followers a motivational speech that would make any business scheme jealous. He told his group that thanks to their hard work, they had successfully turned the place into a disaster, which was apparently the biggest one yet. His followers started cheering like they had just won the lottery and were showering him with praise. Then this man hit them with the plot twist of the century, asking what they should do now since his original goal of destroying the land was complete and he was basically unemployed now. His followers were left blank and suggested they should keep the momentum going by invading neighboring lands. He responded like a bored youth, asking why they wanted to do something so basic like that. They proposed the idea of starting their own kingdom of cursed monsters with their massive army, but he rejected them faster than an internet connection during a storm, telling them they could follow their dreams but not to drag him into their delusions. A follower got upset and said he would do it himself, and the leader basically told him he should have had that energy from the start and that he did not care about their choices at all. After he gave the remaining group permission to do whatever they wanted because he was apparently running a democracy now, a large chunk of his army left. His lieutenant asked if he was really okay with letting all those people walk away, and he confirmed he was completely chill since he had already achieved his star moment of taking down the land. The assistant decided to be curious and asked why he had such an intense grudge, especially since she heard he used to be a duke who was a step away from becoming emperor. The antagonist realized he had never told this tragic backstory and figured it was time to relate it. He revealed that a long time ago when his name was Oliveira, about 2 years back, he was living his best life as a wholesome farming enthusiast. Turns out this man was revolutionizing agriculture single-handedly and creating jobs in rural areas. When his colleague asked why he was being so nice to the common folk, he explained his origin story about how he used to think nobles should run everything until he traveled abroad, and his mind was blown by a foreign country that treated everyone like real human beings instead of having a slavery system, and where even common people lived comfortably instead of struggling to survive. The memory continued with him relaxing in the library of his mansion when his pregnant wife Arya walked in and suggested he take a break. She She was worried about his health since he was working so hard for his people, but he turned it back on her, saying she needed to focus on her health more than him since their unborn child was their greatest treasure. Meanwhile, at another location, some jealous noble had a secret meeting with other envious aristocrats. One of them suggested summoning him to the capital because he was becoming too big of a threat to their comfy lifestyle. These nobles were having a collective meltdown because common people were leaving their regions to work under the better conditions. The rival was telling the truth about how if the target kept contributing financially, he would become the most powerful person in the country and eventually become emperor. The enemy devised a plan to keep him trapped in the capital using whatever excuse they could manufacture. Back at his home, he was celebrating after getting a letter from the other nobles saying they finally wanted to hear his ideas. His wife congratulated him, but she was suspicious of why they suddenly changed their tune and wanted to know what was really going on. He explained that their recent drops in tax revenue had caught the nobles' attention, and if his contributions kept rising, it could threaten their titles and force them to do something productive for once. He read that they were planning a meeting in the capital soon and wanted him to lead them on regional management. His wife asked if he was sure it was not dangerous, pointing out that some nobles saw him as a major threat and could be plotting something sinister. He assured her he was basically untouchable because of his magic skills and his experience hunting demons when he was younger. After he left for his trip, his wife watched from the window, praying that nothing terrible would happen to him. In the village, people were starting to panic because someone had gone missing, and this was the third disappearance in a pattern that was getting scary. The problem was that everyone missing was women and children, and this was not just happening in one area but across multiple regions. Right at that moment, a group of military police from the capital showed up and started questioning the villagers about the recent kidnappings. When the villagers confirmed the kidnappings had indeed been happening, the officers pretended to be shocked but told them to keep their voices down while revealing they had info that the kidnapped people were being sold as slaves. This was all part of the master plan to frame him by kidnapping village women and youths and pinning it on him, then sending the police to make accusations while he was not there to defend himself. The villagers believed the lie completely. Meanwhile, the noble had decided to head back home early because he missed his wife too much to stay away. The rival was putting the finishing touches on his scheme to eliminate him permanently. He loaded some kidnapped women into a carriage with the target's crest plastered on it and had the farmers discover them as evidence. The farmers lost their minds with rage and formed an angry mob with torches, marching straight to the house. When they arrived, they set fire to his home, killing his wife in the process. He returned to his burning house and was devastated by what he found. He discovered his wife's body and collapsed crying, asking the people around him if this was his reward for treating them well, that they would murder his wife and his tiny unborn child. The farmers responded that he had kidnapped the village women, and it was then he realized the whole thing was an elaborate setup designed to destroy him. His grief turned into pure rage as he swore to annihilate the kingdom and everyone in it. He unleashed a devastating spell that sent all the villagers to the other world in seconds. That was the tragic origin story of the villain. The scene returned to the lieutenant, who was feeling depressed because the leader had lost his purpose in life and had nothing to keep him motivated. He ordered someone nearby to gather the demonoid humans who had abandoned them and keep their strength up for whatever came next. The action moved to the kingdom, where the king was officially crowning August as the new crown prince in what should have been a celebration. But naturally, a knight burst through the doors like he was announcing the apocalypse, yelling that an army of cursed beasts was approaching their location. Fear spread through everyone present faster than rumors in a school hallway, but August stepped forward and spoke loud to assure everyone he could handle the situation like the main character he was trying to be. He told the crowd they had specialized teams trained to fight against demonoid humans under the command of the hero, who was the grandson of the two legendary heroes and had earned the title of Demon Hunter. Shin gave a motivational speech to calm the panicking crowd, telling them not to be afraid because nothing could harm them under his watch. The crowd started cheering for him with pure excitement, completely forgetting their previous terror. The youth decided this was the perfect time to name his team the Ultimate Magicians. Then he decided to show off for the whole crowd by casting flight magic on all his friends, turning them into a squad that streaked through the sky. When the crowd witnessed this aerial act, they lost their minds with excitement, suddenly feeling like they had protection from these heroes. The scene shifted to the army of cursed beasts approaching the castle. The people and guards standing on the castle walls took one look at this massive army and probably started updating their wills. The commander started barking orders for everyone to get into defensive positions while sending a soldier to the capital with desperate messages for help. Unfortunately, the reinforcements were going to take a while to arrive. Meanwhile, the hero was flying with his team, having a conversation with the prince where he was whining about the group name situation. He was very upset because when he was put on the spot to name his team, his brain had completely glitched and he blurted out something embarrassing that was now spreading across the whole kingdom like a bad memory. One of his friends tried to cheer him up by pointing out they were almost at the border and that while a carriage ride would have taken them days, they had made it in just a few hours thanks to his flight skills. The blue-haired girl had pre-battle anxiety about facing the demonoids, but the hero acted as support and assured her she was way stronger than those monsters now. He then turned to her and gave her the role of a medic, telling her to focus on healing the wounded while instructing the rest of his friends to blast the enemies with everything they had. Inside the other kingdom, complete chaos was unfolding as a woman ran for her life while carrying a little one. Being chased by demonoid humans who were treating this like some twisted game, but they surrounded her as if planning something scary, the girl with her was absolutely terrified and started crying. That was when the hero and one of his friends descended, sending one of the beasts flying for several meters. The beast's partner got very upset and started screaming about how the boy had no idea what he had just done and that he would not get away with it. This monster pulled out his weapon and started talking trash, saying a simple human could not do anything against demons. Completely unaware he was about to get schooled, he was preparing to use his magic against the youth. But when he saw the absolutely ridiculous amount of power being gathered, he probably started regretting his life choices before he was eliminated. The protagonist decided to add insult to injury by mocking the defeated cursed beast. Then he checked on the woman and her little one, asking if they were okay and needed help. They assured him they were fine and wanted to know who he was and what they were doing there. He explained they were reinforcements from the kingdom and told them they could leave without anyone bothering them. After they left, the hero looked around at the destruction in the city and got absolutely furious with whoever was responsible for this mess. The scene shifted to August, who had found a dramatic high ground to address the citizens like he was on a political campaign. He introduced himself as the Crown Prince and declared they had arrived with enough power to protect everyone. He told the people they could finally feel safe because his team would join up with the royal guards to kick the demonoids out of the city like unwanted guests. Then he turned his attention to the enemies and delivered what was basically a threat wrapped in royal language, telling them their situation was about to get very bad because they had the demon hunter hero on their side. When the people heard this announcement, they got so hyped they probably forgot they were in the middle of a crisis. The ruler was looking at his son with pure pride, feeling relieved that reinforcements had finally arrived. Next, the protagonist started acting like the team captain and assigning roles to his friends. He asked the blue-haired girl to go rescue the injured people in the city, and she agreed while promising to save as many as possible. Meanwhile, one of the demonoid humans was lurking, watching the boy, and probably having an existential crisis about the scale of his power. Two of the friends decided to confront one of the enemies, who immediately started mocking them, saying he did not know he would be fighting a group of youths. One of the girls got so offended she was ready to charge, but her friend had to grab her and remind her she could not handle situations when she was emotional, especially when facing a cursed monster. The girl realized she almost made a rookie mistake and promised to fight properly from now on. But her partner flipped the script by revealing she had already defeated the monster while mixing sand with water to finish him off. Quickly, just then, they heard a knight screaming in desperation nearby. When they investigated, they found one of the enemies torturing the poor man, but the two girls stepped in quickly and took down the monster faster than anyone could imagine. Then two more headed off to face additional demonoids and also defeated them without breaking a sweat. The action moved to some demons heading toward the hospital, where the girl was acting as a field medic for the wounded, planning to turn the place into a slaughter site. But the hero had seen this coming from a mile away and had already stationed two of his friends to guard the hospital with their lives. They managed to take down the demons easily, proving the strategic planning was just as powerful as the magic. Meanwhile, he was standing there being a total menace, holding back the demonoids and taking them out left and right without letting a single one escape. None of them could do anything against him, and they were probably wondering if they had accidentally picked a fight with a final boss. The one who had been watching was having a total meltdown witnessing those ridiculous power levels and had absolutely no clue how to deal with someone that strong. None of them could even try to fight him because the magic energy was off the charts. Meanwhile, August and Maria, who were teaming up against one of the enemies and trying to interrogate him for info, but he was being completely uncooperative. She tried to launch a quick attack, but it was basically useless. The demonoid human fought back against her, but her shield managed to protect her from being defeated. This made her get absolutely furious, so she attacked with everything she had, but the monster dodged it. The prince looked at his partner, and they had one of those silent communication moments before deciding to coordinate their attacks. They started launching synchronized strikes that broke through the magic barrier around the monster. Just as the creature was about to say something important, he discovered his heart had been pierced from behind, making him realize he had been completely outplayed. At this point, the ruler could finally breathe a bit easier and commented that it looked like the battle was ending. The perspective shifted to the commander, who was watching the whole battle from a safe distance like he was watching an action movie, and admitted he needed to completely rethink his strategy after witnessing that absolutely ridiculous power level. The commander decided the smart move was to gather all the demonoids and retreat before things got any worse. But she apparently did not get the memo about the strategic retreat because she wanted to face the hero. She suddenly stepped in front of the group and moved with great agility, declaring she wanted to see what these humans could do against her, clearly having learned nothing from watching her allies get stomped. The scene returned to the girl, who was acting as a medic in the middle of this war zone, treating what looked like half the injured population but somehow managing to heal them all. Suddenly, a desperate woman approached her, begging her to heal her husband immediately because apparently this was now a serious medical emergency. When she arrived on the scene, she found the woman's husband bleeding heavily and in absolutely terrible condition. The woman was pleading for her to save him. The girl agreed to treat the man because she was not going to let anyone die on her watch. At the same time, the hero was surprised by the magic strength of the female enemy. She was preparing to attack them again, but just in time, the two young ladies showed up and managed to block her strike. They started yelling at the soldiers behind them to evacuate immediately, or else they would just be in the way of this fight. The battle escalated with everyone throwing magic attacks all over the place. Alice got so carried away she took down an entire building with her magic power. Before she could continue, the enemy hit her from behind. However, the foe was not done being a threat and stepped in again, defeating the girl and using her as a human shield so the other could not attack her. The enemy then decided to add insult to injury by mocking her fighting style, calling it weak, which was probably the last thing they needed to hear while being defeated. Meanwhile, the monster who had been stalking noticed reinforcements arriving and wondered if that was the leader. But when he tried to gather a group of monsters, they got annoyed and started questioning if they really needed to follow orders. Before one of them could even finish complaining, he was attacked and eliminated, and the culprit was the protagonist, who apparently had zero patience for monster business. The rest of the group tried to make a break for it and scrambled out of the city faster than people leaving a bad show. But the hero was absolutely determined and kept blasting them even as they ran, managing to take down most of them. However, a small number managed to escape, and just as he was about to finish them off, he noticed a powerful attack happening inside the city and realized he needed to get back there immediately. At that moment, she still had the girl trapped while two of her friends were trying to help after seeing this mess from a distance. When they decided to step in, she defeated them easily, proving that good intentions do not always bring good results. She was about to finish them all off when she saw the hero standing in front of her, ordering her to stop immediately with the authority of someone who was absolutely done with her nonsense. When he saw his friends on the ground injured, he got so angry he probably started losing control and wanted to eliminate her immediately. Lynn woke up from her knocked out state and warned him to be careful because this girl was no rookie when it came to magic. He reassured his friend, telling her not to worry as he was no beginner either, then told the other to take care of the others while he handled the main threat. He started attacking her, and it was obvious from the start he had the upper hand in this fight, like he was the final boss, and she was just another minor enemy. She realized she was outmatched and tried to find any opening to take advantage of, eventually seeing some of his friends trying to help him. She took advantage of this distraction, attacked them all at once, and cleared her way so she could escape like a tactical coward. She, apparently deciding that if she could not win, she would at least cause maximum damage, wanted to blow up the entire area. When he noticed her destructive plan, he ordered one of his friends to create a magic barrier to protect everyone else from the blast. After the attack was over, everyone was fine, but she had managed to escape, proving that sometimes the bad guys do get away. After it was all over, they had a discussion about her, agreeing she was really strong and possibly a former soldier or even a hunter, making them wonder what the real point of this attack had been in the first place. They decided to start searching for the enemies. The scene shifted to the group that had managed to escape, including the guy who had been watching the hero like a weird stalker. He talked to her and learned that the commander wanted her to create an opening for him, which explained why this whole thing felt like a setup. The demonoid human was upset because the hero and his friends had much more power than expected, and they had lost a lot of soldiers in the battle, making this a massive tactical failure. At that moment, everyone noticed that the antagonist had been watching everything from above, observing the whole situation from the beginning. The two leads then went to check on the injured people, where they found the girl still struggling to heal the woman's husband, despite trying with all her might. When she realized there was nothing more she could do, she started crying and apologized to the woman, admitting she could not help him and that healing magic could not fix everything, which was probably the worst thing to hear in that moment. That was when the hero showed up and told his girlfriend she would not be able to help the man and that she should let him handle it. When he started healing the man, he was surprised that the guy was still alive thanks to her healing magic keeping him stable. After working on him for a while, he managed to heal all the man's wounds and stabilize his breathing. When the man's wife heard this news, she was absolutely happy and thanked him for what he had done for her husband, probably feeling like she had witnessed a miracle. After some time, the group went to meet the king for what was basically a diplomatic briefing session. August asked the king about something that was bothering him regarding the attack, pointing out that some of them were present during the Empire attack, but then disappeared immediately after. He suspected this attack was a distraction, but there were no other attacks anywhere else, which made the whole thing confusing. Then, he told the king he wanted to form an alliance between their two countries and create a unified fighting front, and the ruler agreed to discuss this further. They then headed back to their kingdom and got a hero's welcome from the people and the guards. The prince had a talk with his father and told him he had a report on the incident that needed to be shared. After they settled into the main hall, the king understood that the other land had accepted their alliance offer. August asked his father to let him be his special envoy to other countries, arguing that as a prince and member of the allied forces, it would be easy for him to be at the negotiation table, and his father agreed to this plan. The hero then talked to his grandparents, who told him he also needed to go with his friend to see the world freely, probably thinking this would be a good experience thanks for him. The scene shifted to the demon region, where the villain talked to the commander and the rest of his allies, asking them if he had not warned them before to leave the boy alone. They apologized for what they had done, admitting they had messed up completely, but he responded by asking why they were apologizing since he wanted them to do this from the start, revealing that this was all part of his master plan. Finally, they showed the king saying goodbye to the duo, as they also said goodbye to their grandparents before heading out on their mission. After they finished their goodbyes, the prince told his friend it was time to go, and he used his flight magic to take them into the sky immediately, looking forward to whatever adventure awaited them.